That's right. You're listening to another episode of the co-main event Mixed Martial Arts Podcast. I'm Chad Dundas. That's Ben Folks. We're both longtime MMA journalists, and for the last 13 years, we've been meeting here every week to break down all the action in the wild, weird, and occasionally wonderful world of mixed martial arts. Ben, it's definitely been wild and weird this week. The Octagon made it over to Shanghai, where Johnny Walker weirded his way to an upset victory over Zhang Minyang, and Aljamain Sterling overwhelmed the ghost of Brian Ortega. We're going to get into that stuff later in the show. We actually got a lot of listener mail this week that I think will guide us through a discussion of that stuff. There's no UFC this weekend. We also got some Hamzat hangover questions, I guess you would say, that we'll try to answer. And, a lot of topics on the docket for this episode. First, though, we have to talk about this incredibly ugly episode from over the weekend. Unfortunately, this is the big ticket headline headed into this week. It's gone viral. It's getting a lot of attention, mainstream attention of the worst possible kind. And of course, I mean, Raja Jackson, the son of Rampage Jackson, brutally assaulting a professional wrestler at an independent wrestling event. I'm not even sure this is really an MMA story, but of course, we get lumped in with it. It seems like we are rarely in the news for any good reasons. We can get into the nuts and bolts of this thing, but this was bad, man. This was really, really bad. So we got this question from Robert Uchi, who wrote in to say, any thoughts on the Raja Jackson incident? At first, I thought it was a work. Then I saw the whole incident, what happened before and afterwards. It looks to me like Raja has some issues stemming from people questioning him as a man compared to his father. Ben, I assume you've seen all this stuff.
Yeah. I found this to be viscerally affecting when I saw it. I think I saw it, was it Saturday night that this footage dropped, and I saw it and I went, oh, I feel a little bit sick to my stomach after having seen that.
Yeah.
And it just, so from what I can gather, reading various stories about it, so Raja Jackson is at this pro wrestling event, and before the event, he was backstage, it seems, right? And this wrestler, Psycho Stu, saw him there and maybe thought that he was a pro wrestler, thought that he was there to be involved in the show, and had this kind of confrontation with him where he smashed a beer can on the side of Jackson's head. And was doing this, it seemed, thinking that here this guy is, like, he's another pro wrestler. We're going to work an angle here. And then was, from what I read, kind of confused that Jackson didn't sell it when he went and hit him inside of the head with a beer can. And then when he realized that he wasn't a wrestler, he was just backstage, which here's where the old time wrestlers would be like, this is one reason why you shouldn't have people who aren't there to work hanging around backstage. But that when he realized the mistake there, that he apologized and said something like, okay, well, you can like get me back or something in the ring. But then what happens is when Jackson jumps up in that ring and slams him, and then he hits him so many times when he's down and he's clearly out. And as you're a viewer, as you're watching it, especially the first time, you're watching it and you're going, how is he still hitting him? Both, how has nobody jumped in there yet to stop him from hitting him, but how is he not realizing, like, I'm like, if you are thinking that you're involved in a pro wrestling thing, even if you're not experienced in the ways of pro wrestling, I would think everybody knows the thing you don't do is hit somebody as hard as you can. And if they're clearly unconscious, you don't keep hitting them as hard as you can. And it seemed like it took forever for people to get in there and finally stop him. And then it was a whole scene after that. And it just seems so disgusting to watch that you're just wondering what was going on in his head at that time. That's the part I can't really make sense of, because it's like, it's pro wrestling, so you want to think like, okay, was the show gone wrong, but it's hard to understand how it would have gone that wrong.
Yeah. I was actually initially going to practice some self-care and not watch this video after I saw the people's reactions online. I saw Big Dave Meltzer saying it might have been the worst thing that he'd ever seen in a professional wrestling ring. And I started to be like, okay, I'm going to save myself that one. But then it just got to be such a big deal, and I knew that we were going to talk about it today. So I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on the whole thing. And I agree with you that the video is very hard to watch. I watched a bunch of background and aftermath videos, and from what I can put together, you're correct about the backstage incident, which I feel like is weird because, and again, who knows how these things normally go, but initially it seems like it could be a work because why would this wrestler Psycho Stu, if he legitimately thought they were back there filming wrestling angle stuff, why would he invite himself? Why would he go into business for himself and invite himself into this fracas? That part to me was when I first saw it, it seemed like it had to be set up. But then, you see the angles where you see the guy, you see Stu ask him, "Are you going to sell it?" after he hit him with the beer can. And then obviously what transpired in the ring turned out to be incredibly and sickeningly real. So I was watching some kind of extra video about this. And so Raja Jackson and Rampage Jackson are actually streaming at the same time when
Seems
this
like
happens.
they're kind of constantly streaming. It seems like Rampage is kind of constantly streaming.
Right, on this platform called Kick, which personally I had never heard of before this weekend. But there's parts in this where after this beer can attack happens, Raja Jackson is getting torched in his comments, right? While he's doing this stream, where people are commenting like, "Oh, why did you let him get away with that? Why didn't you attack him? You're a little bitch," all this other stuff. Rampage Jackson sees the footage and like calls him on the phone and is like, "I saw you hugging some guys in tights." Like he's doing the Rampage Jackson thing. Essentially, he's like he's ribbing his son about essentially, doing your like normal homophobic MMA fighter stuff. So all of this stuff is going on. And from the footage that I saw of Raja Jackson's stream, while he's sitting at ringside, you can kind of see him getting madder and madder. And he's being baited essentially by these comments, by these internet comments on his own stream. Another thing that happened backstage before the show started, I guess Raja Jackson had been brought to this event by a friend of his who was a wrestler. And after they had this altercation with Psycho Stu, these two guys, Psycho Stu and Raja Jackson, like made up several times. Like they shook hands. Psycho Stu apologized, said he didn't know what was going on. It seemed like it was relatively cool. But then this other wrestler, who was Raja Jackson's friend, as they're walking through the hall to go out to the event, he's like, "You can give him a receipt in the ring." He's like, "You know what that means. Give him a receipt. You go tag this guy." And he says, "And if Stu has a problem with that, I'll jump in the ring too." So like he's getting egged on by this wrestler friend of his. He's getting torched in his comments. He's got his dad calling him on the phone, telling him basically that, he's a weakling. And I think all of this kind of escalated in his own mind. So when you jump in the ring, you get this reaction, which was obviously incredibly overblown, incredibly brutal, violent attack. And it's taken the internet by storm. I'd never heard of Raja Jackson before this weekend. Now I can't open my social media account without my algorithm offering me various streams featuring this guy.
To the extent that I have heard of him, it's when I've seen clips of Rampage on his show, kind of making jokes at his son's expense. To some, like there was a clip of him talking about how, he didn't want his kids to be fighters, but one of his sons who wants to be a fighter, and he says something like, "He's dumb. I don't know what else he could do other than be a fighter." And he's joking, in the Rampage fashion, similar to what you mentioned. Like he's joking, but it's weird because I think like after something like this happens, Rampage has streamed so much of his life in recent years that there was immediately going to be a attempt to connect. Hey, this thing happened. What role did Rampage play in either molding this person who would go and do this, or in kind of goading him into this incident? And that sucks for everybody, like it's a weird thing to be trying to do and trying to like lay that sort of blame and assess that. But it's also, I saw Matt Brown make a point where he was just like, I think a lot of us are trying to make not excuses, but trying to feel some empathy, and there's a, oh no, what did this kid do? Did he just ruin his life doing this kind of feeling? And that there wouldn't be that if it wasn't Rampage Jackson's son.
Right.
It's, you can't take that part of it out. And yet it also, like, if this is really just like a total miscalculation on his part, that he got involved in a wrestling work without realizing, without really wanting to, and then they told him like, okay, you want to be involved, and he saw a potential to be like, all right, maybe I'm in this now, but doesn't know how to do that, only knows how to do, hurting people for real, and gets carried away and doesn't realize how badly he hurt somebody, then that is kind of tragic. Both because that dude's really, really fucked up from the attack, but also because this is going to be bad for Raja Jackson. I mean, regardless of what happens in terms of like criminal consequences or whatever, like this is the kind of thing that's going to follow you. And if that's it, if that was just like you didn't quite know what you were doing, you got swept up into this wrestling stuff and it got totally out of hand, that's super sad, man. And the alternate explanation that people seem to want to reach for is Rampage Jackson just kind of needled this kid, thinking it was just like, oh, hey, we're just cracking jokes on each other, is how maybe Rampage shows love, whatever. And other people, as part of that comes with sort of streaming your whole life, essentially, and that we know something about, like having done this show and having something of an audience for people will feel comfortable saying some stuff to you, even if you feel like they're strangers. And if that's it, and he just finally exploded, and that's also super sad, man. Like, it sucks, the whole thing. It just, like, when I watched it, I saw it shortly before going to bed, and I was emotionally affected by it, where I was just like, I wish that wasn't in my brain. I wish I hadn't seen that, and especially like at something like a pro wrestling event. Like, there's kids in that audience who saw that. Can you imagine going home after, like, the drive home with your kids after you took them to a pro wrestling event? They're really into pro wrestling. They saw that, and you had to be like, I don't even know what that was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to make excuses for Raja Jackson or give any kind of mitigating account. I was just saying these are the outside things that I saw happening that seemed to escalate this situation to the point that he got in there and did this stuff. Whether or not he thought he was involved in a wrestling storyline, or he had been goaded by his father, or rage baited by internet comments, like, this is unbelievably out of hand. Like, no matter what you thought, for you to react this way is a crime. And like, he will be lucky, frankly, if he doesn't get charged with like attempted murder, because he is sitting at ringside, on his own stream over the course of however long it was leading up to this assault, talking about how he's going to get this guy. Right. So like, he is premeditating this attack on his own stream. And as far as I know, there hasn't really been any law enforcement intervention here. But there should be. He should get arrested and charged with something. And, assault or attempted manslaughter, whatever it may be. But like, if they did throw the book at this guy, they've got all the evidence they need, man. He sits over there on the side of the ring and premeditates this thing for, seemingly a couple hours before he gets in there and makes this attack. I did also watch a podcast featuring the guy who ultimately stops him, because you are right. He is in there pounding on this dude for a long time.
Yeah.
Before anyone intervenes. And
the dude is out right at the beginning. Like,
he gets knocked out by the slam.
Yeah.
He doesn't even need to get hit one time. He's knocked out by the slam. The guy who Intervenes finally was fucking pissed on this podcast that I watched about the promotion letting this happen, about the other wrestlers not stepping in to intervene. He's pissed at Raja Jackson. Obviously, he's pissed at Rampage Jackson. This is a tight-knit, independent pro wrestling community. And so these guys all know each other. And this guy, Psycho Stu, he's a veteran. He was a military veteran. He suffers from PTSD. And he seems well liked among all these other wrestlers. And these guys are incensed about what has happened. This has happened in a wrestling promotion run by Rikishi, the former WWE star. And he was not at this event. He was apparently out of town, so he wasn't present at this event. But they had a relationship, a designated relationship with WWE as one of their potential developmental situations, but that has been dropped. And so there has been some ramification for the promotion, if nobody else. I don't know. We'll see what happens with Raja Jackson, man. I can't imagine, especially given all the attention that this has received, I can't imagine that there won't be some manner of law enforcement situation here.
Yeah. There's that scene. I saw a different angle of the scene where everybody finally gets in there and stops him. And you do wonder, like, what is going through his mind when everybody jumps in there and very angrily and aggressively gets on him and stops him from doing that? Is he thinking this is all part of the show, or does he realize that he's gone insanely too far? I don't know. But in a different angle, I saw somebody jumped on there and pinned the guy.
He did.
Pinned
Yeah, he got pinned.
And the referee counted it, and it's like, okay, I guess we're doing that for, like, maybe thinking like, all right, well, there's kids in the audience. Maybe if they see him get pinned, then they'll think maybe it was okay. I don't think that's going to work that way, if that was the hope. Also, it seemed like when you're watching it in real time, I don't think your focus is on what the referee and everything is happening at that point when they're all mobbing him in the corner. It is also weird. I've heard this before, especially now that the UFC and WWE are both under the same umbrella. They're both under that TKO umbrella, where people have raised the concern, like, will there be questions about what's the difference between them? And really those questions are raised in the other direction, typically, where they're going, will this make people start to think that the UFC fights are staged? Because they'll go, all right, hey, it's the same company doing UFC and WWE. Is the UFC just like you could see how somebody might look at it and be like, is this just like the Japanese, like, shoot style kind of pro wrestling thing? Is that scripted too? Especially if you didn't actually sit down and watch much of it. Like, that's been mostly where the concern is. And then here you have this thing where it's just like MMA bringing its ruthless violence and maybe complete inability to know where any sort of lines are into pro wrestling to tragic effect.
Yeah. So I'll have to wait and see, I guess, what happens with that. It sounds like Psycho Stu is awake and talking at the hospital, at least the last report that I saw from his brother, but maybe has no real recollection of what happened and seems to be facing a long, perhaps arduous recovery. So not great stuff over there. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into some of this listener mail, just because it's kind of the driving force of the show today. We got this message from Matthew Webb about Johnny Walker. He writes, I wake up Saturday morning, turn on some Bluey while my child eats his muffins. Muffins for breakfast. All right, it is Saturday.
It's Saturday, man.
House. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pour some coffee, look at my phone, and realize Johnny Walker is about to throw down in Shanghai. I log on. Immediate takedown attempt. He winds up on the bottom, gets elbowed from the clinch and rocked a few times, lands a calf kick mid-second round, then follows up with 2 more and 50 ground strikes and wins. Vintage Johnny Walker, ladies and gentlemen. I close my app, sip my coffee, and say, Johnny Walker, you fucking degenerate, you. Discourse.
Man, I think when I woke up and saw this, I went, what? I think I said that out loud. What? Johnny Walker won this? there's a TKO finish in this fight and Johnny Walker won it? Because that didn't seem to be the way we were headed. Especially you look at this one where you got the UFC looking and being like, all right, Johnny Walker, there's a fella known to get knocked out. We got this guy we're excited about. We've been looking for our continued footholds in the Chinese market. We're going over there to Shanghai. Let's let the Mountain Tiger go out there and cold clock Johnny Walker. That'll be fun for everybody in the main event. A lot of cheering. Everybody will go home happy. And then instead, you get some moments in that first round where it looks like what everybody thought is going to happen is about to happen. And then Johnny Walker survives it, comes back. He lands that one leg kick where you can see like right away, he's got problems. You go to put that leg down and it's just not working after that kick. And that was the beginning of the end there. It was a ton of ground strikes. The dude's moving. He's trying to show that he's still in it. And, he's hearing the like, hey, you got to move. You got to like he's doing it and just can't really, especially it seemed like at one point, like he's trying to get back up, but his leg won't do it for him. So what can you really do there? And then Johnny Walker somehow pulls off the win. That arena went quiet, man. real quiet after that.
Yeah. I mean, you go out there, you shoot for the takedown basically on the glove touch. That is some vintage Johnny Walker weirdness. Like, and you know what? He's such a weird mobile. We can't even be mad at him for it. If it was somebody else, we'd be like, maybe that's a little cheap. Johnny Walker,
he didn't fake the glove touch, really.
No,
but
he waited for Jean Mignon to put it out there, and then he shot.
Yeah, but I mean, I think like the glove touch should not be taken for granted that we're going to do the glove. That's why everybody knows you're standing there in the corner before the introductions. You try to make eye contact across the cage with your opponent and hold up your fist and go.
Yeah,
you mouth those words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are we going to do it?
You're definitely mouthing the words on our audio podcast.
And then you try to get a nod from the other guy, or sometimes he shakes his head no, and you go, all right, we're not doing. That's what you got to do. But he tried to go right under the glove touch, shoot for that takedown, and it didn't work.
No, it not.
Didn't work at all.
That's the other total Johnny Walker part of this, is that he shoots for a wild ass takedown, ends up flipping himself over straight into letting the other guy get mount. Just and right there, I was watching it and I was like, uh-oh, this thing's all but over here with Zhang Minyang on top of Johnny Walker. But big win for Johnny Walker, man. You gotta give him some credit. Gotta give him. He went out there and where he was a significant underdog in this fight. Basically, flew him to China as the fall guy.
Yeah,
and for him to get the win that should be a big deal for him.
That's the thing too, is this is not how the UFC thought this was going to go. You don't fly Johnny Walker out there for this fight. The guy's coming off 2 straight knockout losses, and you're matching him up against the guy coming up hot with a bullet who you're excited about in a market that you think that you can do some future business in. You're trying to have this fight as the main event in that market. There's no way the UFC thought, well, Johnny Walker has a pretty good shot to win this one. Let's see what happens. Let the chips fall where they may. No, they were out there being like, all right, here's something we could still use Johnny Walker for. Did not think ever that you're going to be sitting there at the end of a round and a half. Johnny Walker's doing a celebratory worm. This time, you see, he's learned at least. He's careful. Like he'll lay himself down gently. He'll clear the zone a little bit, give himself some space to do that worm, and then he'll do his worm. He learned from injuring his damn shoulder or whatever it was when he just fell face first into the worm that time.
Well, if you're not going to learn from your mistakes, what kind of Weirdsmobile are you even?
Yeah.
This is what separates us from the Weirdsmobile animals. It's our ability to learn from our mistakes. I was pleased about, what was it? Who was the ref in this thing? Goddard? Somebody like that? I was pleased with him letting the fight go until the stoppage, because I did win my over-under bet on this fight by 7 seconds. So there we go.
That is what is important. I kind of had my whole shit wrecked by Johnny Walker winning this fight. Really did not see that happening at all here. And I paid for it. I paid for I don't want to say, Johnny Walker, I apologize, I was not familiar with your game, because I am. I am very familiar with this game. And I guess I just forgot, like, as part of Johnny Walker's overall Weirdsmobile-ness, there is also this part. He can go out there. He can surprise you every once in a while.
He can surprise you, get a win. We got this question from Dan Alexander. The subject line says, insert tongue-in-cheek emoji. He says, after tackling a whole bunch of issues leading up to his fight, then putting on what was a great display versus Brian Ortega, I can't wait to see Aljamain Sterling fight for the title next. Please discourse. We talked about this on the Patreon page last week. Obviously, it didn't happen in time to make it on the proper, but Brian Ortega missed weight by whole ass weight class for this, what was intended to be a featherweight fight against Aljamain Sterling. Ultimately had to be made a 153-pound catch weight, which is essentially a lightweight fight between Aljamain Sterling and Brian Ortega. We talked about how they made this man go out there and do a face-off against Aljamain Sterling when Brian Ortega looked like a frat boy who had to wake up early to catch his flight home at the end of spring break, right? He's up there just tottering around, looking dizzy, doesn't seem to be totally with it. He didn't show up to the fight looking like he really wanted to be there. Like he had some moments late in this thing. He was kind of able to, I guess, turn it on a little bit, but there was no moment in this fight where you were like, wow, Brian Ortega rebounding in a surprising way to make himself, to put himself in a position where he could potentially win this thing. This was, even at the beginning when they're introducing him and he's doing the LA with his fingers, you know how Brian Ortega likes to do that. You could see in his face that
you felt like he didn't believe it.
Not even he believed it. He didn't really want to be there, it seemed.
I mean, obviously it had a pretty bad week leading up to this. I am still amazed that he made it the distance, and that also fucked me in $20 for everyone to see again, because he looked so bad at the weigh-ins, and then it just seemed like, especially this being a 5-round co-main event, did not bode well for him. And Aljamain Sterling, I think he said afterwards, he injured that elbow on that spinning attack, and then afterwards couldn't really even lift his arm up. And you could see it, like the commentary team was mentioning it late in the fight, like maybe in the 5th round. They're like, man, he's holding his hands really low. And he's saying, yeah, because I had no choice. I injured my elbow trying to get a little too fancy in there, out here throwing spinning shit, connected with the spinning shit, but hurt himself in the process. And up until then, he was really piecing Brian Ortega up with the jab. He's just stinging him over and over again with that jab. It also felt like one of those fights, though, where Aljamain Sterling feels like, all right, I'm not worried about this guy striking wise. I feel like I'm faster than him. I feel like I can pick him apart there. Why take him down, give him a chance to score some submission off his back or whatever. And also that once you realize you can do that, the thing he said afterwards where he's like, I was glad to show off my striking a little bit. And it was like, I don't know if anybody else was super glad about it, because it was very much a kind of hunt and peck sort of striking. We're not stringing together a whole bunch of punches, and didn't really look like he had Brian Ortega in too much trouble, but also didn't look like he was in that much trouble himself. I can't hate on the strategy. I also feel like if you were not a fan of Aljamain Sterling's fighting style before this, you probably feel like he just found a new way to make you not a fan.
Yeah.
It kind of just seems like bad look for Brian Ortega, better but still not spectacular look for Aljamain Sterling in this fight. But as I was watching him at the very end of this fight, where he's in Brian Ortega's guard and he's just hammering away, I was just like, we could have done this. I feel like we could have done this sooner, and maybe gotten him out of there. Who knows?
There had to be something pretty significantly wrong with Brian Ortega, right? He's never missed weight before. And granted,
he struggled with the weight. Like, we've seen that before.
Sure, but he didn't really even come close. Maybe he got closer and then rehydrated up to 153. I don't know. But had to be, I think, some manner of injury or something hampering him from his weight cut. And then he did not dispel that notion once he got in the cage. Did you see Aljamain? I don't know if it was inserting a tongue-in-cheek emoji even in this message, but implying that he should in fact fight for the title next, given that he and Alexander Volkanovski are the same age and at similar points in their lives. Perhaps, we let a couple of veteran thoroughbreds go out there and race each other.
Is that how it works? That if you're the same age, it's kind of like a Pop Warner League or something, where we're just like 12-year-olds. The 12-year-olds are up next. You throw the Aljamain and Volkanovski in there because you feel like, all right, peers, gentlemen of a certain age together. I think Aljamain might have to do a little more to make the case on that one.
They're both in the U47 league, and so they get to fight each other. Next question this week came to us from Rob Reynolds, who wrote in to say, was it just me or was Bisping unnecessarily harsh on Sterling during his fight? In the first round, when Sterling was getting off anything he wanted while Ortega couldn't muster much of a defense for what was going on, Bisping was harping on Sterling's right hand being low. During the second round, Sterling tried some spinning shit and it failed, and Bisping basically told him to never do that again. I also felt like the criticism for Ortega was quite light, except for he's really got to do something. I felt the commentary was quite pointed, but I could also just be off base. I didn't notice this. Did you notice? I remember when Bisping said, don't be throwing the spinning stuff, but I don't necessarily know that is out of line in terms of criticism.
And in fairness, he hurt himself throwing the spinning stuff, and maybe the closest he came to costing himself the fight was injuring himself throwing that spinning stuff. So maybe that's a fair point. I don't know. I mean, I think that sometimes all the commentators, with the exception of a few, maybe somebody like John Anik, I feel like they're play-by-play people, I think, keep it pretty straight. But sometimes the color side of the commentators, they're just trying to offer some kind of an opinion. It's easy for them to seize on a narrative early on, and maybe sometimes informed by who they like coming in, who they don't, fighting styles that they like coming in. And it could sometimes be hard for them to let go of that narrative once they've got it. We've seen that with Joe Rogan over and over again. Bisping, maybe has a similar kind of issue. It didn't stand out to me, though, as being particularly egregious.
In fact, seizing on a line of reasoning or storyline and hanging on to it throughout the fight, no matter what happens, I would say is a defining characteristic of a UFC broadcast.
That and declaring it to be basically over, and then it's not.
This question came from Oscar Eagle, who writes, I'm loving the unofficial tournament that's happening at middleweight. We have Berhalo versus Imavov in September, and then Fluffy versus RDR in October, all gunning for a chance at Chimaev. It seems the old guard, Adesanya, Whitaker, Strickland, and perhaps DDP, have all been sort of left behind by the new generation of fighters all of a sudden. There is something similar happening at welterweight, but it just feels like we are at a generational crossroad, similar to when we said goodbye to the likes of Silva, Weidman, Rockhold, and Bisping. I know the old guard might still get a few wins, but you know what I mean. Do you agree? I feel like this is a good point, and I feel like it happened really fast.
Yeah.
Like, we had DDP up there as your middleweight champion, and we were having a hard time becoming true blue believers in his ability as champion. And then he loses to Chimaev, and all of a sudden it does feel like we have this generational sea change. And like we did get these two fights booked very quickly, either one of which could produce a number one contender and or produce a championship eliminator between the two winners. It to me, at least, even though Khamzat's win wasn't unexpected, the turning of the page aspect of it seems like it did kind of come out of the blue.
Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about this at welterweight too, where it just seems like you look up one day and, oh, holy shit, all the dudes from this era seem to be old and losing, and a whole new crop of dudes who the last time we looked seemed like fresh-faced kids who maybe they'll pan out and maybe they won't. and they're suddenly now in the driver's seat. And it is, I think it's a thing that we don't always realize, and fighters especially don't always realize how quickly shit can change. Like think about just like a calendar year in this sport, and a lot of times the people who you think are really good spots at the beginning of the year, by the end of the year, people are going, it's over. Like they're on the decline. And same thing, somebody pops up and goes from just like middle of the pack to being a top contender in the span of the year. And so much of it, I wonder, is it like momentum? You get a couple wins, you get confidence, you really start to put it together, and it works the same way in the other direction. Because it seems like we have seen fighters where they're going along pretty good, and then they lose one, and then they lose another, and then you can see them kind of showing up being like, well, I can't lose this one. And it changes their approach. It changes the way they fight. They get in their own heads about it. And I can see how it could be such like a psychological barrier, because you're going, hey, I can do everything I want to do in training, have a great training camp, but everybody's going to judge me based on 15 minutes on Saturday night. And some days you feel better than others, and some days it goes your way, and other days it just doesn't. And it seems like you can almost see that sort of fear and that like the negative momentum start to snowball on some people. And then before you know it, somebody like Leon Edwards, where everybody's looking at him now and being like, well, we saw what there was to see with Leon Edwards.
Yeah. Who do you like coming out of this this 4-man bracket, or at least these 2 fights that we've got booked right now?
It's interesting. I think when I first saw RDR in the UFC, that first fight, I think a lot of people, and myself included, went, oh, okay, are we just going to find out that beating people in one championship doesn't mean a whole lot? Are we, is it going to turn out to be another guy who comes over to the UFC and just makes the UFC roster look pretty good? But lately, when you've seen him in there lately, like it seems like he's pulled it together now. He's a big dude for that weight class. He's got a different style that a whole lot of people aren't as used to dealing with. I'd be very interested to see how that style matches up against Khamzat. But the Fluffy Hernandez fight is a tough test for him. I think the winner of that one probably, that's going to be the guy to watch, because both RDR and Fluffy seem like they're right there. We're waiting to see one more pass-fail test from them before we really get excited.
Nasruddin Imavov's going to win that fight next weekend, and then the UFC is going to be like, how about a rematch between Khamzat Chimaev and Dricus du Plessis? And
Nasruddin Imavov is real close to getting the let's send this guy on a research vessel treatment. The way everybody seems so eager to just like forget him and ignore him. He's like, Nasruddin, if you're listening, and I assume you are, if the UFC tries to tell you that you won a raffle on a trip around the world, don't believe it, man. People just trying to get you out the way.
Mm-hmm. Ask them where the bathroom is, and they tell you it's right out this door, but it turns out it's the door to the alley, and it locked behind you when it closed.
Mm-hmm. Something like they're like, hey, we called you a car, and you get in there, and then before you know it, you're on the highway, and you're going, wait, this isn't the way back to the hotel. Don't think it can't happen.
This question came in from Hair Danny Man III.
Oh, okay. We've made the change.
Yes, we moved up from boy to man for Hair Danny. I believe this was a discussion maybe that happened on the Patreon last week, but he writes in to say, Ari, which middleweight champion, past or present, could stop Khamzat? So we did get asked this question. I believe we were asked would there have been any middleweight champions that in their prime could have beaten the version of Khamzat Chimaev that beat DDP? And I think we had a hard time coming up with options. He says, you named every middleweight with a pulse: Silva, Strickland, Chama, but you don't mention George. Let's go hypothetical. Middleweight GSP, like the one who beat Bisping, sans colitis, and with Jackson, Zahabi, Danaher, and Freddie Roach in his corner. We know. we know George won the middleweight title, right?
Yeah.
But I got to say, it didn't even really occur to me when somebody asked us former middleweight champions who could have a good fight against Hamzat. I was actually thinking about middleweights. I wasn't thinking about George coming out of retirement in his leather jacket to get one win over Tim Sylvia and then peace out again back into the happy land of retirement. Like, I was thinking about actual middleweights.
Okay, but if you were to think about George
probably the best option.
You think so? I think the size and the strength, when you go kind of like a similar style like that, I feel like George might have some problems there with Hamzat.
So if you're telling me if we have a draft, you can draft any one of these so-called middleweights in their prime, and you can take George, Silva, Weidman, Rockhold, Bisping, Strickland. Well, you can also take Alex Pereira. Who's your number one pick out of that group?
God damn it.
It's George. Your number one pick is George, right?
I don't know, damn it. Because it's like the only George middleweight fight we saw was that Bisping one. And that was an aging version of Bisping, who basically was fighting with one eye at that point. And George came in, looked good, but also stylistically, that was such a favorable matchup for George. Such a favorable. I mean, and credit to him, he's smart. He knew it. He was like, not interested. Oh, Bisping's the champ. Very interested all of a sudden. So it's smart. I just don't know. I think that if we saw a face-off of George St. Pierre standing there with Hamzat, I think we'd go, whoa. Whoa. And just if you're gonna be out there trying to do, jabbing and Superman punching your way to victory over Hamzat, I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's George or it's Pereira, right?
Well, Pereira's got one pretty narrow path to victory, but yeah, okay.
That's
I think George gets kind of bullied by Hamzat's size and strength. And frankly, I think it would make me sad. So I'm glad that it seems like there's absolutely no risk that we're going to see it.
I mean, he's not going to come out of retirement this time.
No.
To fight Hamzat Chimaev. That's different than what he did the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Shades of Randy Couture moving back up to heavyweight to fight Tim Sylvia just because he knew that he would beat his ass. Next question this week comes from @Falbert. See what he did there? It's like Fat Albert, but he moved the F.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that Brian Battle signed on for Dirty Boxing Championship on August 29th. Do you think this is a step in the right direction? Or should he focus on a documented weight campaign, maybe The Biggest Loser reality TV show or a Weight Watchers commercials? Weight Watchers still even around? PFL can't use him because he can't be trusted to make weight multiple times with their season format. And also, if you checked social media, there was a video of him clubbing that weekend at UFC 319 after his last fuck up, which seems pretty damning. I don't know that I've ever heard anyone ask whether or not a move from the UFC to Dirty Boxing Championships is a step in the right direction. But
yeah, what would a step in the wrong direction look like?
I don't know. I don't think it's out of the question that Brian Battle maybe gets his way back into the UFC. They let him go because of the weight misses, but it didn't seem to be, or at least I haven't gotten the impression that it's the acrimonious Dana White cut that you can never come back from.
Yeah. He did turn around and sign there with a quickness, didn't he?
He did. He's ready to go, man. He's ready to fight. He just didn't make weight. He's ready to go again.
Yeah. And now we're going to be out here feeling like, all right, everything's still going fine. We're just doing the same stuff over here in Dirty Boxing now. I mean, yeah, it does seem like as long as the wheels don't completely come off, you could see Brian Battle show back up in the UFC. The video of him clubbing, I did not see.
Neither did I.
Also, what do we mean clubbing? I feel like that's an old guy term to use, isn't it? At this point,
I don't know. I guess. What would you call it?
well, I mean, are we saying we saw a video of him in as many as 1 bars sitting there with a drink in front of him? Because clubbing implies that you're out there in a black dress shirt that's unbuttoned to your navel, and you are wandering around to various nightclubs. Like, if you're going clubbing, you need to go to 3 or more clubs that night.
I'm trying to find a video. I'm trying to find this video.
Are you Googling Brian Battle clubbing?
That's exactly what I Googled, and I didn't get any results here.
I feel like,
Brian Battle went clubbing. But this is after, and the page is not available. It says Brian Battle went clubbing after his fight at UFC 319 got scrapped.
I mean,
can you blame him at that point?
See, but that's the thing. Is it's like,
he's supposed to go in the morning like you fucking the Big Lebowski in the West Wing? No, man.
Clubbing implies that you're out there having an awesome time. If you're at a dark bar sitting there in the corner on cracked vinyl seats drowning your sorrows, I feel like that feels a little more appropriate. So it seems what I'm saying is it's a matter of how you frame it, perhaps.
Yeah, I can't find the clubbing footage here.
I need to know how many buttons are undone on the shirt.
Dirty boxing, that's Mike Perry's thing down there in Florida, right? Dirty boxing championships.
That's the one you can't even really see unless you know somebody.
I think they did started making it available via streams. The first one was a private party, which actually maybe is smart to work out the kinks. You work out the kinks in front of the live audience and John Jones, and then you put it on the internet.
You build up a sense of anticipation. People going, "What happened? Why can't I see?"
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. I'm not saying that this footage doesn't exist. I believe in at Falbert, crack reporter. I believe in his reportage here. I think this is probably real. I just can't find it. Next question this week comes to us from David Putty, noted Seinfeld character.
Yeah.
I'm sad, he writes. Frankie Edgar is fighting in BKFC in October. He had 3 knockouts at the end of his career. Does this really need to happen? Can we all get together and stop it happening? Still, I suppose it's Frankie's choice. And as Luke Rockhold says, I guess he's brave enough to, quote, put on the gloves and go in there. Love you both equally. I would stop this if I could.
You ready to fan man it up?
Mm-hmm. I will parachute. Hopefully this is an outdoor event. I will parachute into the BKFC ring to stop Frankie Edgar from fighting, Jimmy Rivera? I think he's fighting UFC veteran Jimmy Rivera in a bare knuckle boxing match. That's just like, we all love Frankie Edgar, and a bare knuckle boxing match with Jimmy Rivera just doesn't have the sizzle, man. Not only do we not want Frankie there, who cares about him fighting Jimmy Rivera?
Yeah, like what is it going to do for the Frankie Edgar legacy to have beaten Jimmy Rivera in a bare knuckle boxing match? I kept thinking afterwards about the way you put it when we were talking on the Power Hour, where you pointed to a headline that said Frankie Edgar explains why he's coming out of retirement to fight in BKFC, and your take was, this better be good. And it really wasn't.
No.
The explanation for like why you doing this, and he knows, like he's had an awareness. He's like, I know I said I'm never doing it. I'm going back on my word. But then when he went to offer up, like, here's why I've decided to do this, there just wasn't a lot there.
It was basically, you guys are going to be in New Jersey.
They're going to be in New Jersey, and they were going to offer him some money to do it. That seemed like it.
Almost like a guy who was waiting. He was waiting to get asked for something.
It just, yeah, especially because, as we know, even if you win a bare knuckle boxing match, you might come out of it looking a little worse for wear.
Yeah. Frankie, sometimes you have to be content with getting the opportunity to decline, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you say no and it's like, hey, man, it's nice. They asked me and I said no. So I did get the opportunity. This is like, this guy's just waiting for somebody to come to New Jersey and ask him to fight somebody.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. You could have been like, hey, I got invited to the party. It doesn't mean I got to go to the party.
In fact, it gives you a good feeling. Get to decline the invitation. The best part, though, you're right, was when somebody asked him if this was going to be the last one or what he thought his future was from here on out in fight sports. And he was basically like, hey, I already told you guys I was never going to do it again. So no matter what I tell you now, who's going to believe me? Which at least that shows some self-awareness from Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, because you are just at that point basically being like, you should not believe me. No matter what I say here, you should know better than to trust that this would actually be it if I say so.
All right. I should have put this question up there with the Hamzat talk, but this is our last one this week from Robert Lewis Stevenson. Writes in to say, people keep saying Hamzat beat DDP because DDP doesn't really have much of a guard game. If that's true, then suddenly a guy who lives and dies by pulling guard and throwing up submissions starts to sound kind of interesting, doesn't it? Hear me out for a second. Paul Craig. Yeah, I know. But come on, no one else is going to beat Hamzat anytime soon. Let's just think outside the box here. He's fought at middleweight. He's probably bigger than Hamzat. FYI, I may or may not be Scottish.
Wouldn't it be some Paul Craig shit to lose 24 minutes of a fight against Hamzat Chimaev and throw up a triangle choke, final 30 seconds, become middleweight champ, then turn around and lose to the first challenger that he fought?
Oh yeah, no, we're not talking the Paul Craig era would not be beginning in the UFC, even if he did manage to pull off what would have to be considered the upset of the young century, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like that we're thinking of stuff.
Yeah, we're throwing out ideas.
Yeah,
seeing what sticks.
I like that we're being creative. We're using our imaginations. We're not just letting ourselves be chained to the idea that the number one contender has to fight the champ. We could go ahead and get silly with it. I just don't know quite how you justify it. You'd be like, hey, everybody, get excited. Here's how you do it. Hamzat Chimaev is going to fight a mystery man. A masked fighter, if you will. Create a sense of just who could it be? Do you think it'd be this guy? Is GSP coming out? Is it, all like the poster is just like the little black cutout and like as a question mark on the face. And everybody's just kind of going like, who is it? And then not until he's in the cage, unmasked, it's Paul Craig. And we go, didn't see it coming.
By God, King, it's Paul Craig. Paul Craig is here. He's 1-5 in his last 6 fights, King.
Let's see if he can hit that triangle off his back.
I mean, like Johnny Walker weirding his way to victory against Zhang Minyang, it would be a total Paul Craig thing to do to win that fight, right? To have Hamzat Chimaev's arm flapping around like we did to would we do that to Jamal? Isn't that Jamal Hill? Yeah, right? It was his arm that was flapping around against Paul Craig. Do it to Hamzat. Let's go. I'm with you, Scotland.
They pull the mask off and the bagpipes just start playing. Just hopefully we don't have to do with that when Justin McCulley was revealed in that Bellator thing where
I was just going to bring that up.
He took off 2 masks and they still had to be like, that's Justin McCulley.
Yeah. That wasn't in Bellator though, right?
I think it was in Bellator.
Wasn't it in some manner of pro wrestling thing? Oh, that's right. Justin McCulley. Jesus fucking Christ. All right. Well, if you had Justin McCulley getting referenced on your bingo card this week, you can mark that one off. Otherwise, that's going to do it this week for the Co-Main Event podcast. We're going to be over at the Patreon page all week long. Join us over there. This podcast could always use your support. We do have fun. It's an incredible community. You get access to the Discord message board where people are talking fights and almost everything else you can imagine 24 hours a day. Patreon.com/co-main event. That's where you can find us. We hope to find you there. We appreciate the support. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow for the live chat if you happen to be a patron. If not, we'll see you right back here next week. As for right now, we are done. We are through. We are out. What would it take for you to get into that dirty boxing ring?
Depends who I'm fighting.
What if they come to Jersey and they give you a call? Are you jumping on?
Jersey holds no special appeal for me, I must admit. I'll tell you what if
they're going to be in Montana? What if BKFC is coming to Montana and they're like, we need to call this Folks kid?
If they come to Montana and they say it's you and Chad Dundas, no gloves, just, bathing in one another's blood, I'll be like, I've been waiting for this day.
And see, this is where I take my own advice and I feel pleased to decline the offer. I feel honored to decline the offer.